Yeah, it's.
I have him on the agenda.
He was like,
What's the issue?
he was like.
Oh, yeah, this Sabbath video, I can joke that was an excellent presentation.
They didn't have any allergies, but
Writing audit
I heard
committee
that. The lightning strike on the-
disseminating information.
Gave me a line from Mystic Stations to Wakefield Junction,
Yeah,
So you hear that too?
No, I didn't actually use that, but Wakefield Junction,
Just
that would give you the, well, that's the, that would be your S&T line, yeah, but it would be our lines go from, Ward Hill to Salem Harbor.
Oh, okay.
So if it severely dips the 345 ring, then that would have been us.
Yeah.
I had a
That's
few
what I wanted.
corrections
That
that
right there would.
made that set up.
The S&T line.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or we'll call the grid line, but yeah. Like they
Spelling
should-
mistakes.
makes sense, because they tell you about
Yeah.
that part of low intakes, if it's like.
When they come in, they usually just
approve
approve
Yeah.
quick and
It's
it's
it's just that I kind of knew.
So that meant, they put the next job. That was gonna be. I mean, it's just, it's fine.
I'm guessing if they lost the 345 line, but they won't regen.
Oh, it didn't, yeah, oh, I don't think it, I don't think it lost. Well, that's,
Or if it operated and it created, that could have been enough.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Cause
Usually when my line is just minutes ready to leave.
It's there,
You know?
yeah, I know.
It's not 8 o'clock.
Listen,
Medical errors, few things.
Absolutely.
They usually throw it up for discussion. And they should look at it, bring it on, and that's, you know,
yeah, we were 72, we got a 34-year-old son. Not hockey.
I think I've ever tried that. I don't want to.
Oh,
It's way too hard.
My two brother-in-laws will go big, like my son played. And my two
Good to go?
brother-in-laws are big players. Their father.
too.
Holy fuck, he did everything he was like, and, he would have big
Yes.
skating lessons in the season.
Sorry, no food in the.
Because he had the ability to do their feet over anything, and he said he wanted them.
I'll leave a couple communities that deal with first.
Biggest game.
Super like the,
Become better skaters.
Yeah.
They had two big giant lugs, right, but they actually very nimble on their feet.
If they can do, cameras and rockers are, then like they can do it all.
Oh, yeah. The best camps my son went to go to, the ones that were run by. There's a woman.
Yeah.
She's big.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in Golden Hills and all. So what had been between Buffalo's and Wakefield?
probably, there was.
But they were together.
There was a big.
Recording in progress.
It's just, no, this is just so that I don't.
Yeah, it's a little itty bitty.
No, I tried doing that with this way, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
I used to do that. No, this way it's.
Right.
I do it both ways.
I go around the corner.
We need an order. This is the meeting of the RMLD Board of Commissioners. I understand we're being broadcast tonight on RCTV at this point, so we've got there. So basically, I'm going to read the code of conduct. The RML Board of Commissioners recognizes the importance of hearing public comment at the discretion of the chair on items on the official agenda. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressing the board shall state their name and address prior to speaking. It is the role of the chair to maintain order in all public comment and ensuing discussion. Yeah, so we call the cab meeting to order too.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Okay, first thing I have on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment? We do have one person on the Zoom.
He's from Finance Committee.
Okay, finance committee member. Okay, very good. Welcome.
Glad to have you here.
Hi, everybody.
Have any words you want to speak?
Yeah, no, I'm just listening in, so thanks.
No, you're muted.
Yeah. Oh,
No words. Okay. Okay, I think he said no. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Oh,
so
all
the
good.
next thing I have on the agenda is the commissioner vacancy. First off, Mr. Stempeck stepped down at this point. The committee met, Mr. Talbot admirably filled the shoes, okay? And basically, it was voted by the three members who were present that we would have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to select a replacement that'll serve through the next election at this point. So I understand that meeting will take place sometime in July. I understand at this point the meeting between the Board and the Selectmen. I encourage anybody to, that's interested to get your name in with the Reading Town Clerk. Would be very helpful.
July
Okay.
18th.
Go ahead. You want to say something?
July 18th is the joint meeting,
Okay,
and there's an application that Laura Jim has.
okay. So again, if you're interested, put your name in. We will hopefully get the best candidate we can possibly get. Okay? All right, very good. And with that, I will go to item 4. Item 4 is Zach Ventros, a director with the Markham LLP. Zach, you are up. Okay?
Thank you, Phil. So my name is Zach Ventros. I'm the audit director who is in charge of the Reading Municipal Light Department's December 31st, 2022 audit. And tonight I'm going to go through the financial statements and highlight some certain account balances, some certain account trends. I think Erica is going to pull up the financial statements up on the screen, so maybe make it a bit easier so I can kind of direct you through. But if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask them and we'll address them at that time. So before I jump into the financial statements, just a couple of quick notes. The first note is that generally the department's financial statements are presented on a comparative basis. In this year, due to the implementation of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 87 for leases, it did not make sense for the department to present on a comparative basis. So you're going to see just 1 year of financial information in these financial statements, and then next year they'll be presented on a comparative basis again. Before I jump in, I think it's important to kind of have a takeaway or conclusion from my presentation here tonight. And I think that conclusion and takeaway from my presentation here tonight is that the department's in a good financial position. The department had positive turnbacks from your operating results. You have a well-funded OPEB trust fund, and then there was no management line. I'll kind of get into each of those throughout the course of tonight's presentation. So first, we're going to go to the first page after the table of contents. And the first page after the table of contents is the independent auditors report. This is essentially what the department hired us to produce. The department received a clean opinion, which means there are no exceptions. And this is the best opinion you can receive from an independent auditing firm. And it's the same opinion the department has received in prior years. Next, I'm going to turn to page 4, which is the first page of the management's discussion and analysis. The management's discussion and analysis takes place on pages 4 through 8. This is a narrative summary of the results of operation. And this section also discusses major financial areas. So instead of just simply sitting here and reading this to you, I actually want to jump right to page 9, which is the statement of net position. And we'll discuss the same thing on page 9, 10, and a few of the other pages that are discussed here in the management's discussion and analysis. So the first item I want to bring to your attention is actually something new for your financial statements this year. And that new item is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 87 dealing with leases. It needed to be implemented by all municipalities across the United States, starting with the year ending, with your year ending starting December 31st, 2022. And I'm going to kind of pinpoint where those are. They're in 3 spots, actually. You can see up here, I'm going to show on the screen, the very first one you see right here under current assets, you'll see your lease receivable. And that has a balance of $295,000. The second area where it's new on your financial statements is under non-current assets. You'll see there's another line item right here called lease receivable. And that has a balance of $2,321,000. And then the final area on your balance sheet where it's going to show up is right down here under deferred inflows. And it's going to be called related to leases, and that's got a balance of $2,616,000. So the two receivables are going to be offset by that deferred inflow. So it doesn't have any impact on your statement, on your income statement or your net position. This accounting standard is all going to be on your balance sheet. And so what this accounting standard does, it basically says in the past there were capital leases and operating leases. There's no distinction anymore. It's just leases moving forward. So it asked that the department went through a process determining situations in where they were both the lessee and the lessor. And when it's determined that in situations where the department is the lessee, we're not material and therefore not incorporated into your financial statements. However, there is some lease agreements in which the department is the lessor, and those were material to the financial statements. And primarily what that is comprised of is 11 lease agreements for fiber optic cable leases with Crown Castle. And those 11 lease agreements projected into the future are approximately about $2.6 million in receivables that the department will receive over the course from 2023 through 2031 from Crown Castle for these 11 lease agreements. So that was one of the big changes in the new items in your financial statements this year. Again, wasn't required to be in your financial statements last year. It is now required to be, and the department did go through that process, did do their due diligence, and it was implemented. Next line item I'd like to bring to your attention. There's a couple line items below that lease receivable. The very first one, we're going to look at these together. The first one is land and construction in progress under non-current assets. And that has a balance of $5,929,000. It's actually about a $4.4 million increase from the prior year. Now that increase is primarily due to some land that was purchased in Wilmington for a new substation for about $4 million. So that's why you see that increase in that land and construction in progress. Was the department made a purchase of land for about $4 million in Wilmington for a new substation. Right below that, you're going to see capital assets net of accumulated depreciation. And that's got a balance of $86,055,000. It's actually about a $1.3 million increase from the prior year. So the department had capital additions on this line item of about $6.4 million in calendar year 2022, but you also had depreciation expense of about $5.1 million. So that balance went up by about 6.4, but then was decreased due to your depreciation expense of about 5.1, which is why you see that increase of about 1.3. And some of the major capital item additions that the department made in the current year or in fiscal year 20 or calendar year 22 was about 1.3 million was spent on new poles and fixtures. 2.4 million was spent on overhead conductors. 1.2 million was spent on underground conductors and devices. That's everything I want to bring to your attention on the asset side. I want to move down onto the liability side. And the very first one I want to bring to your attention is the very first line item under non-current liabilities. It's right here, and it's called the net pension liability. The net pension liability had a balance of $5,358,000. It's actually about a $6.6 million decrease from the prior year. And I'm going to get into the reason for that decrease here in a moment. But there's a couple things that I want that you should be aware of in relation to this number. First, I'll explain what the number is. The number is the Reading Municipal Light Department's proportional share of the total unfunded liability for the Reading Contributory Retirement System. And this figure is actually being presented as of December 31st, 2021. So this is the only number in your financial statements that's not being presented as of December 31st, 2022. It is presented as of December 31st, 2021. So keep that in mind when we're talking about some of the trends in relation to this figure. The presentation of 1 year in arrears is allowable per accounting standards, so there's no issue there. But what I want you to know is as of December 31st, 2021, the Reading Contributory Retirement System was at about 91% funded. What we see as an average in the Commonwealth for this time period is between 75 to 80%. So having the retirement system at 91% funded is a good financial position for the Reading Municipal Light Department. And I had mentioned that that figure decreased by about 6.6 million. The reason for that decrease of about 6.6 million is primarily due to the investment results of the contributory retirement system for calendar year 2021. During calendar year 2021, the investment results for the retirement system came in greater than what was anticipated by about $21.5 million. So Reading Municipal Light Department's proportional share, if you will, of that of those investment results that came in greater than what was anticipated is about $5.7 million. And those investment results that came in greater than what was anticipated really helped reduce that liability. So that's why you see that decrease in that liability, is because your investment results for the retirement system came in greater than what was anticipated by the actuary. The next item I wanted to show you is right below that. It is the net OPEB liability. And OPEB stands for other post-employment benefits. This is essentially the projected health insurance payments for your current employees as well as your retirees into the future. And this number is actually determined by an actuary. It's largely unchanged from the prior year. It's actually about $110,000 increase from the prior year. And I think what I'd like to do is actually go to the last page of the financial statements. Give you all a second to jump there.
What page number is that?
46.
46. Thank you.
Perfect. So page 46 is some required supplementary information in relation to your other post-employment benefits liability and your trust fund. And it's really the schedule of the net OPEB liability. And I think that this is a great illustrative example. As you can see here, there's quite a few columns, but I want to focus on the 2022 column. And you can see the very first number under that 2022 column is your total OPEB liability. And an actuary was brought in to determine what that liability was. And the actuary determined that that liability was about $9 million or $9,046,000. However, the department has put aside $4,770,000 into a trust that can be only used to pay for this liability into the future. So as you see down here that this liability is about 53% funded. And the reason that that's important is because most cities and towns are anywhere from 0 to 10% funded on this liability. But light departments in the Commonwealth are generally between 30 and 40% funded on this liability. So to have, in comparing to your contemporaries in the Commonwealth, Reading Municipal Light Department is a bit ahead of your contemporaries in regards to beginning to fund this liability. And that's a good financial position for the Light Department to be in. It's going to be used or viewed favorably by your users of the financial statements. I'm going to jump back. And I'm going to jump to page 10. The first line item I'm going to bring to your attention is actually the total operating revenues. And as you can see, your total operating revenues has a balance of about $100,202,000. It's actually about a $13.8 million increase from the prior year. Now, that increase is primarily due to two items. The first item is that the department increased their rates on January 1st of 2022. And this is the first rate increase on your base rate since 2018. And primarily it was about a 6% increase on most of those base rates. It does vary a little bit. But again, for purposes of tonight's discussion, primarily about 6% increase on those base rates. So that's the first reason for you see that increase in your operating revenues. The second is that there was some global volatility in the purchase power market, and you can actually see that your cost of purchase power increased. So if we go one line item below that, you'll see purchase power. It's under your operating expenses. And that amounts to $64,682,000. It's actually about a $4.4 million increase from the prior year. And that increase was primarily passed along to the customers here of the Reading Municipal Light Department. So that's the second reason why you see that increase in those operating revenues, is because there was a corresponding increase or a proportional corresponding increase in your purchase power that again was passed along to the ratepayers of the Municipal Light Department. And then the last number I wanted to bring to your attention is actually three numbers from the bottom. It is your change in net position. And your change in net position this year was about $9.8 million. So again, you had positive results of operation during the calendar year. Next, I'd like to turn to page 11, which is your statement of cash flows. In your statement of cash flows, the very first bucket up here at the top that I want to bring to your attention is your cash flows from your operating activities. And if we look at your total net cash provided by operating activities, in total, that net cash provided by operating activities was $14,854,000. So the reason I want to bring that one to your attention is to kind of show you where the department is utilizing those funds from your operating activities. And if we go down a couple buckets to cash flows from capital and relating financing activities, it's right here. You can see that the net cash used for capital and relating financing activities is about 10.2 million. And the primary chunk of that is acquisition and construction of capital assets. So the department spent $10.8 million on the construction and acquisition of capital assets during the year. So the department's primarily using the cash that's provided by your operating activities to make capital improvements in the infrastructure of the Reading Municipal Light Department. And that's everything I wanted to bring to your attention here tonight on the financial statements. Are there any questions or comments?
I have question. I mean, is this the end of your?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So, questions were like, what are going to be some of the major risks for us as an organization? I just, I made a long list of questions, so.
Sure.
So I'll just read them all out if you don't mind. Go ahead.
Do you want to go one at a time or?
Let me just mention them and then you can see if you can lump them together. And then, so we know RMLD is a profitable enterprise. But I think this year, you know, and an audit is always looking backwards, right? Always audit is looking backwards, but going forward as an entity, I expect we're going to have major capital outlays that are being planned, right? And we are also in a higher than normal interest rate environment. And we are also in a high energy cost environment. So from that perspective, you know, what should we be concerned about? And I think you've been involved in the audit for a while, so you know the history of the organization. So that's my detailed questions. And then I had a question about the OPEB numbers, and I was looking at so what causes the total OPEB liability to change year to year? And the numbers like in 2021 were 55%. In 2022 is like the net position was like, I think the net OPEB number was 52.81. So it had started increasing from 2017. It had gone from like 28% to like 55%, and then it came down to 53%. So just want to understand that. Is there anything we should be doing differently? And the last question is that there have been some changes in the personnel at RMLD that have historically had to interact with you. So what kind of interaction have you had and any feedback on that? So I can repeat these questions, but.
So Zach, why don't you start with the OPEB first?
Okay, I did write them all down. I think I may have gotten them all.
Okay, why don't you start with the OPEB?
Okay, so for OPEB, I think a great illustrative example of the OPEB, let me find the exact page, but it's going to be in the note disclosures of the financial statements. Page 36. So on page 36, we have the changes in the net OPEB liability, and it provides maybe a bit more clarity on what kind of goes into that. We can start right at the top here with the balances as of the beginning of the year. And if we focus on the total OPEB column, that's going to be determined by an actuary. So the department does hire an actuary to come in and determine that number. And then we do some audit work on that number to make sure it's reasonable and fairly stated. So as you can see that you have, service and interest costs that will increase it. And then if there are any changes in benefit terms, there was a slight change in benefit terms that increases that liability. There are changes in assumptions. So for example, if they assume that the retirement age is 65, but they're going to change that assumption and now say, well, actually, we think that people are actually going to start retiring at 67, that'll increase the liability. So if they change any of those assumptions, sometimes they will decrease the liability.
Yeah, it didn't actually come down, right? It was like around 11 million or something, it came down to like 9 million. If you look at the numbers over years, yeah.
I don't know specifically the change from year to year to year.
I was looking at page 46.
46. There must be an assumption change or a difference between expected and actual experience. That's probably the driving force of those total OPEB liabilities.
So my sense is like, was it like a headcount reduction that caused this change or something? So,
I can certainly look into that for you. I don't have that information off the top of my head. When was it? 11 million.
in 2018, sorry, 2019.
I can certainly look into what was the change in, from really, it looks like 2020 to 2021, and I can get back to you on that one as to a specific, it's probably, if I, an educated guess, it would probably be a change in assumption, or it would be a difference between expected and actual experience. The difference between expected and actual experience, that does have like a very similar impact to change in assumptions. Essentially what that is they'll say, well, we're assuming that people are going to retire at 65. And then they'll look at what the average age is of actual retirees, and then they'll factor that in as well. So that's the difference between expected and actual experience. But if they were to change their assumption into their calculation, into their formula, that would just be a change in assumption. So generally, those are the two big driving forces of the change in the total OPEB liability.
Okay.
To answer your question about why did it go from 55% to 53%? Again, if you look at page 36, the driving force of that is right here is your net investment income. It's actually a loss this year. So the market wasn't as strong in calendar year 22. So the department actually lost about $581,000 on their investments in that OPEB trust fund in calendar year 22, which is why you see that decrease in that funding.
Was a good year for returns, right?
A good year for what?
21 was a good year for returns. 22
Yes.
Did that happen to be that we had finally put it into the stock market in 2021 after 5 years of discussion?
That may have been the
Just to-
case. I know that in being able to
That
just
So the
discussion a
next
few years
question
ago.
was, is there anything, you had talked about the fact there is no management letter that is coming out to the department, but you did say there are some recommendations that you made to the department. So why don't you cover that?
Sure.
Cover that.
So I'm going to jump to page. Page 12. So, I mean, I guess I'll explain maybe what a management letter is. So in addition to proving out the numbers and the figures in the financial statements, as we go line item by line item, doing our audit tests on them to make sure that they're fairly stated. We'll also look at the financial reporting processes as well as the internal controls of the department. And if we think that anything should be improved, we would recommend that in a formal management letter. We did have a couple recommendations, but we left them just as verbal recommendations. We didn't think that anything was serious enough to warrant a formal management letter. And I've talked about it with Ben, and the biggest issue that we had this year was actually this line item right here. This due from proprietary fund, which is the electric fund. So at year end, the department did make a contribution to the OPEB trust fund, but didn't factor that contribution into the general ledger for the OPEB trust fund. They had it going out of their electric fund, but didn't have it coming into the OPEB trust fund. So we had to make a small audit adjustment to account for this $274,000 contribution that was made by the department, but just didn't get into the general ledger or the bank in a timely manner. So talked about it with Ben. He showed me his calendar. He's already got it in his calendar to make sure that he's making that change for 23 and make sure that that's not going to be a problem moving forward. So that was, one of the items and recommendations that I had for the department this year.
Okay, so the last question was the risk. Right?
Yeah.
Last question was
What
risk.
are the major risks? I mean,
Okay,
both,
so
yeah.
first off, I'm gonna ask you, and then maybe Greg would have to address this too. So you had more of the department view. So you actually do a risk assessment,
We do a risk assessment looking at the internal controls,
okay?
not necessarily as in depth of the industry. I will turn it over to Greg on that one because he's going to be much more knowledgeable and be able to speak to that probably much more intelligently than I can. We certainly look at, the financial stability of the department, and currently we don't see any issues or concerns there. Like I said, I think the department's in a good financial position. As far as any industry, I'll turn it over to you, Greg, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, in terms of, if I can put the category of risk, external risk, and then I'll put it in the category of operational risk. So from an external risk perspective, we'll talk about this a little bit later in the general manager update. But there is the regional electric network, which is managed by ISO New England. They do a very, very good job of managing it. But as we transition from a traditional fossil fuel based generation system to more, non-carbon, primarily solar and hydro, significantly more solar and significantly more wind. The nature of the generation will be much more intermittent. That combined with the fact that the overall load, the industry estimates are that in the next 20-25 years, the load due to electrification, which is driven by the mandate for decarbonization, that will put that combined with having more distributed generation throughout it is going to require significantly more transmission assets. All said and done. And then there's a question of winter reliability over the next, realistically, over the next 10 winters. So all that means from our perspective, our mandate as a utility is reliable, low cost, non-carbon energy, keyword being reliable. And so one of the risks that we are working hard to mitigate is the reliability, specifically if ISO New England, particularly in cold winter months, makes a request for load reduction. And if they do load reduction, then we, along with all the other customers, need to do, typically they start at a 10% load reduction. In the absence of generation or storage, we would have to turn customers off. We do not want to do that. So one of the things that we're doing so that's a risk. And one of the things we're doing to mitigate risk is within territory generation and storage. And we'll talk about storage in the general manager update as well. And it's not a new thing. We've been talking about that all along. I think the other risk factor in terms of managing the business is having our best understanding of what the load looks like going forward. And when I say load, it gets back to kilowatt hours consumed by our customers. And it's not just the total for the year, but it's what the shape of it looks like, not only season by season, but over the course of the day. And matching that load profile with an intermittent supply is another risk factor that we are aggressively working on with data analytics and storage and within territory generation. Those are from an internal operation perspective. The last internal operation perspective is going to be team and talent. We, as you pointed out, we've made some significant changes in terms of our senior leadership. I'll let Zach comment from his experience and his observation working with us. We've got another 2 positions to fill at a senior level. We have a very strong management team. The management team is dedicated to fulfill the vision, the charge of reliable, low cost, non-carbon. So I don't think that's a big risk, but if the management team leaves for whatever reason, that's a no.
Yeah, that's always a risk. Yeah.
Always a risk, right? You understand intimately well, right? These organizations are driven by people. Everybody from the facilities team up to the general manager seat, everybody contributes to it. So I don't foresee the team being a big risk, to be honest, but I think the regional risk, which we have plans and we're working on to execute, and then really understand what the near-term load forecast looks like. Those are the big pieces.
Correct. Yeah, because I think, I'm very well calibrated with everything you said. What I wanted to really see was from an auditor's perspective,
Sure.
what was the biggest concern you have? And this piece I know very well. It's the auditor's viewpoint. I just want to know that.
I don't have any concerns or I don't think that there are any risks from a financial or an audit perspective.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, I don't see anything from that perspective that you should be concerned about. You did mention the change in the personnel and how it was from last year to this year. I'd say that there was no change. The department with last year's administration and this year's administration both were very well prepared, and their financial records were in good order. Anytime we asked a question, they were extremely timely in providing us the information. From my perspective, it was fairly much status quo. Working with Ben and Greg was a pleasure this year, and nothing to be concerned about or anything along those lines.
Thank you.
Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so further questions? Just a couple things that I report from I'm on the Town of Reading Audit Committee before we go to the board subcommittee on this.
Bill, just a little louder, Bill, or just mic closer, just a little louder.
Speak a little louder. Okay.
Just a little closer.
Get the mic a little closer here.
Thank you.
There we go. Get the microphone. So the Town of Reading Audit Committee had a couple of concerns. On page 10, where it says capacity and transmission adjustment, there is a transposition amount there that it will be corrected in the final version. There was also a question raised that I raised about the when you figure out the leases, you're supposed to use the incremental borrowing rate. And and they're not sure whether that actually factored into the calculation of the lease receivable accounting that you see here. So in essence, the Town Audit Committee basically did recommend to the Board of Commissioners to accept the audit dated June 8, 2023, but we made it subject to the correction of the capacity and transmission adjustment amount on page 10 and further research on the lease accounting with possible correction thereon. Okay, so that was the recommendation that was made by the Town of Reading Audit Committee. And I will turn it over to the board subcommittee now.
Thank you, Phil. His follow-up was an excellent presentation done by Zach, and there was some great questions by the board. And again, I was gonna mention Phil's on the town auditing committee, so it was myself and Marlena were on the subcommittee. And we took Phil in the Reading Audit Committee's lead. They did have some really good questions that they were asking as they went through, but Marlena and I also agreed with the Reading Audit Committee to accept the report as presented.
Subject to
Phil's changes, and we did capture on our suggested motion the same identical language that Phil input.
Okay. Any questions on that? No, see none. Okay. So, okay, first up, the motion has listed, to accept the, audit. It has listed as Melanson. Will this report go under the name of Melanson? We're going to Markham.
It will go under Melanson. So
We'll
maybe
go
I
under
should
Melanson.
take a quick step back and explain to you folks. Melanson was your CPA firm and has been for a number of years. We were recently acquired back in January by Markham. Markham is one of the top 15 largest accounting firms in the country. So the audit team, the principal, the individuals who were working on a day-to-day basis with Reading and the audit strategies we took did not change. Essentially, the only thing that's going to change is the name on the letterhead, but that's not going to happen for this year. This will be the last year that we issue reports under Melanson. So we have up until June 30th to issue reports under Melanson, and then everything after June 30th will be issued under the Markham title. So, next year we'll be issuing we'll be issuing the financial statements again, but we'll be issuing the independent auditors report. And the only change will be, it's just the letterhead from Melanson to Markham will be the only change.
And it cost us more.
Nope. So Markham took the contracts on and said, we're not changing the prices.
Okay, that's good.
Mark up.
So just to be clarified, the suggested motion is going to change. It should say move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners accept the 2022 audit report from Melanson, fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022, as presented, subject to the correction of the capacity and transmission adjustment amount on page 10 and further research on the lease accounting with possible correction thereon. And that's on the recommendation of the RMLD Board of Commissioners sub-audit committee. You got it, Erica? Okay. You make the motion. You just say that you move what I just
I
read.
move what Phil said.
Right.
Second.
Okay. Any comments from the CAB, or we set on that? Just want to make sure if there's any questions. Okay. All right, it's been moved, seconded. Was that second? Okay, Marlene seconds it. Now, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, that motion carries 4-0. All right, we're on to the minutes.
Mr. Pacino, if I could just make a quick comment.
Sure, go
I
ahead.
just want to thank Greg and Ben and the entire RMLD staff for all their involvement in this process. It's a not an easy undertaking, and they were again very well prepared for us, very timely in their responses. And this is the first set of financial statements that our firm is issuing, or our office firm is issuing. I can't really say firm because it's nationwide for our December 31st audit. So again, kudos to them, and again, just want to thank them for their entire process. Very professional, very well prepared for us.
Yeah, we thank you, we too, Zach. I mean, your presentation's been very helpful and very informative here, so. And I understand you will be staying around with the new firm.
Yes, I will. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, very good. You're welcome to stay if you like.
Ribbon.
All right, let's move on to the minutes. Do I have a motion on the minutes? Item
Move that
six.
the RMLD Board of Commissioners accept the excuse me. Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve the open session meeting minutes of the November 9th, 2022, November 30th, 2022, December 15th, 2022 meetings on the recommendations of the general manager and the board secretary.
That second,
Second.
Marlena seconds it. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, that motion carries 4-0. Vivek, you're up.
Okay, thank you. So, for the cab minutes, just from a procedural point, there was some changes that we need to make. And I've discussed this with Erica.
Okay.
And so these were like, so what we could do is we could get, so I could point out the changes. I'll come.
Oh, this was this was a
Island,
island.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to characterize that as more of a typo than a major change, or is there more than that particular?
there's a few changes.
A few changes,
I'll just make a note and I'll mention them. So that's why.
Go ahead. Okay.
Okay, so the first one, so like in the document, it was in the PDF that was given to us was on page 86. But here, I guess, in this document, it will be on page. It's about the NEPA conference, about the NEPA conference.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is page 6 of the cab minutes, page 6, the cab minutes. So the spelling of Highland, like is the Highland name. So like Highland is HYLAND. And I also said that, you know, that the way some of this is written is not right. It doesn't make sense. So there's language I would change. And there was also a point, it says that Mr. Sony suggested that heating loads may surpass. What actually I said was that Kelly Detweiler said that. So it's not me saying it. It was I just mentioned that Kelly Detweiler said that heating loads would be higher. I actually checked my notes.
So we get these minutes,
Yeah, I was quoting someone else. Yeah.
will we get these minutes then reprinted and approved at the next meeting?
No, Erica will, so we will, I'll put in the language, Erica will record it. And so we can say that we can accept the changes as suggested by Vivek. So, yeah.
It's not my minutes, but my personal recommendation would be that you hold off and get improved at the next. It's up to you.
We could do that
guys.
July.
It's up to you guys.
Okay, fine. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you're talking some changes here.
spelling, and just your context and it's
Truthfully, I
just-
don't
yeah.
think it's that,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
bad. And where he's just
It's up to you guys.
contradicting
It's up to
somebody
you
else.
guys. what you
Yeah,
want.
and also that, you know, the next paragraph after that, there was one paragraph is doesn't read quite right. So, okay, fine. We can deal with this next time.
Okay.
So we'll just take it offline.
Yeah.
We'll do it next time.
I'll send. You know what paragraph?
All right. Okay, fine.
All right,
So we'll pass it next time.
we'll hold off on that, okay? We'll move to item 8, which is the NEPA, the Northeast Public Power Conference at this point. So we need to actually approve Greg to go, since that's part of his contract. Also, we need to know which commissions would like to attend. I am planning to attend. So. Who?
Okay, keep going.
We lose somebody? No. Yeah.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve Gregory Phipps travel to and attendance at the Northeast Public Power Association, NEPA, annual conference to take place August 20th through the 23rd, 2023 at the Mystic Marriott Hotel in Groton, Connecticut.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Yep. I'll take my lead. She said first. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. That carries 4-0. Just bear a motion. You're fine with that.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve for all commissioners that are interested in attending travel to and attendance at the Northeast Public Power Association, NEPA, annual conference to take place August 20th through the 23rd, 2023 at the Mystic Marriott Hotel in Groton, Connecticut.
That's seconded.
Second.
Dave seconded it. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. That motion carries.
Okay, so, Cab, yeah, I think looks like a good conference. And can we have a motion?
I move that the Citizens Advisory Board approve for all members that are interested in attending, travel to the attendance at the Northeast Public Power Association Annual Conference to take place 2023 of 2023 at the Mystic Marriott Hotel in Groton, Connecticut.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Okay, very good.
And I think like last year, Greg, you had written up a summary of that. I think it'll be great if you can do that
Yeah.
again this year. I think it's,
I will do that. I'll share it internally and with you guys as well.
thank you.
Interesting. August the 23rd will be my birthday.
Mhm.
There you go. All right. So we go to item 9. Greg, you just set up, or are you gonna, we need to go direct to Bill?
Directly to Bill.
Okay?
Okay, good evening. So I'm here tonight to present two proposed rates that we are not ready to implement yet, but we want to prepare you for the fact that we are developing these rates and seeking your input on those. So one is an economic development rate. And the goal of the economic development rate is to structure an electric rate that helps promote business growth in our communities. We know that that our MLP, the benefit of an MLP is that we're able to keep rates relatively low. We've been very successful at doing that. That is attractive to businesses, but we understand we could be more attractive to businesses. And not only that, but the large, stable, steady, around the clock loads that larger commercial and industrial customers bring help us keep rates low. It serves as a very large block that allows us to buy power around the clock at lower prices. So the more that we can build that base load in our territory, the more all of our customers will benefit from. And not only that, but if we use it as an economic development tool, it also increases jobs in the area. It will also increase the tax base, and it increases the ripple effects of having more business here. So the vibrancy of the community. And specifically for RMLD, it also improves our economics if we have higher revenue that's not only during peak times, but around that is not dependent on season. So the development that we're looking at, it's looking at an introductory discount that will be for a relatively short term, sort of like a tax abatement works to attract new businesses. We'll focus on larger loads because again, those are the ones with the most value. And there are certain line items that we would provide a discount on that we could absorb and then get the benefits of the load growth as that customer remains on the system. So we want to target a discount percentage that is meaningful to a company looking to either expand their operation in the territory or relocate to the territory. And it's really an opportunity for us to expand the time of use rates as well. So this will, the results of this we hope will be strengthens our financials. We saw earlier that they're strong, but they can always be stronger. And we know that large businesses really have a sophisticated site selection process, and this is something that they would take into account when they're looking at relocating to an area. And then again, we believe that it will support the economic objectives for all of the towns that we serve. So on the next slide,
Bill, quick question. If I understood you properly, you said that an increase in the base load has benefits to the other ratepayers as well.
yes.
And how does that work?
So if we can contract for around the clock power,
Okay.
that tends to be a lower cost per megawatt hour than buying it during peak periods. So if you can increase the block of power that we're buying at that lower cost, it lowers our average overall cost of energy purchase.
What if the new load though is coincident with the peaks? You said-
That's why we want to couple it with a time of use component.
And that'll be his next slide. I think the other big picture, the idea behind this is to create incremental load, and you understand, right? Part of our cost structure is variable is tied to usage.
Yeah.
And part of it's fixed. So our goal here is to increase usage against the fixed base. So the cost of our fixed base on a per kilowatt hour basis is going to drop down. So that's part of the drive. The same thing we're doing with air source heat pumps.
Yep.
So that's in a nutshell, more variable usage against the fixed base.
So you wouldn't anticipate that the incentives offered to new businesses would adversely impact existing ratepayers?
No, well, we would take a long view on that. So what we'll do is we'll analyze it over a period of time, and look at the economic impact. So the initial discount might have some impact, but we think it's an investment in getting a larger customer to be in the territory, with the goal of keeping rates lower over the longer term.
Do you want to say
Yeah,
something?
just one question also. So like in addition to rates, the other attractive piece is time to power.
Is what available power?
No, time to power.
Time to power.
That means how long it'll take someone to get that kind, because like if it's a large industrial customer, they come in, they have a high demand, and whether you're in a position to supply that power. And I've heard people use that term, time to power becomes a decision factor for
Yeah.
customers. You've dealt with some of that.
Oh, I understand. Intimately, yes.
So that's something that we'll have to think about also.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And we would, the idea is that we would set this rate, be negotiating with these customers that are looking at either locating here or expanding their operation. That would give us, they need time to develop whatever they're investing in here, and that will give us the runway we need in order.
Yeah, no, because the flip side of a discount is time to power. You may be able to charge a premium, and I'm just throwing.
Oh, on getting it faster.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. So here are the two areas we'll be focusing on. We don't want to focus on the energy and giving a discount on the energy. We want to focus on the fixed components, because those represent our fixed costs. And again, if we increase the denominator of megawatt hours sold, then we're able, for our fixed costs, we're able to spread those fixed costs over more megawatt hours, and that also drives down the cost for other customers. Here we would be, that's why we're focusing on the fixed cost for the discount. We won't be focusing on the energy costs. We'll be focusing on both the demand and the PPCT charges, which are capacity of transmission. So the total, we target a total bill reduction of 10 to 20%. And as the numbers here show, we would have to discount the fixed costs at a higher rate in order to achieve those somewhat modest 10 to 20% discount, because the fixed costs make up about 2/3 of the cost of delivery of the power.
So
Hey, Bob was first, and then I'll go over here.
Yeah, just a quick question, I like the concept, but from our perspective, this is long-term contractual type agreements, I would think, because you have to build something in order for that, these larger customers, and your standard costs, they're gonna be associated with it, like, if you build it, you need it, you build it, you pay for it. But a lot of times people's loads don't materialize.
Mhm.
So you're left with, oh, hey, you said 10 megawatts, and you're using 3, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to pay for 10 meg, they want to become more efficient as soon as they come out of the gate. So
Yeah.
just a cautionary note
Good.
to some, you're gonna offer something, then you're gonna enter a contract, but then whatever contracts you build, if you don't get to a certain baseline usage, you can't get a discount. I mean, that's just reality.
Yeah, so this rate will have a minimum level, right? It'll have a time period, and then back to the next time, any capital investments like additional lines to feed it, that would be under a standard same program where we would bill them directly for the actual cost. This would be tied just to the actual usage, so it'd go up and down with the usage, but there would be a minimum. And the other thing that the structure behind it, originally it was intended to attract new customers, but we also want to encourage customers that are already in our territory to continue to build out in our territory. So we're not going to exclude it to be purely a new customer, but some that go, whatever. And that's part of the thing that is not quite finished with the analysis, but wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like. And this feedback is actually very helpful for us in terms of things to think about and refine. But what's that minimum threshold? And then we might put a cap on it. We'll certainly have a time cap on it, but we might have a kilowatt hour maximum on it as well, in case they're actually over, going back to Ken's point. And at that point, then we go into our capital base, having to create a fixed base, having to create more to start with that. So there's some additional analysis. The real intention here was while our industrial and commercial rates are very low, they're very, very competitive. There is a lot of interest in terms of companies coming to the region, and we really want load growth coming to our area. And there's other factors. Electricity is just one factor. Water and sewer and access to 93 and 128 are all factors. So this is a small piece, but it is trying to work in concert with the economic development of the various towns as they try and attract new customers in. Hey, not only do we have good rates, but there's also this near-term economic development rate as well. That's the intention behind it. There were a couple other comments over here. Sorry.
Well, I guess to your point about the rates already being attractive, I mean, there's a substantial difference between any investor-owned utility options that they've got. So is this little increment of additional advantage worthwhile? Is that actually?
Well, we need to determine that and what would be meaningful to a customer when evaluating it. It's a good point. We need to have those.
How do you do that? How do you determine if it's meaningful versus the point made about it's already the lowest game in town?
Yeah, although I would say even though we're low, we may not be the lowest because there are other MLPs, right, that are nearby, like Peabody. But I think we need to have those conversations with our commercial key account customers and ask them, what their plans are for expansion, and if they're looking at alternative sites, and what are the things that would make them want to select, one of our towns as where they would expand their business. But I think we do need that input from the key customers to understand what they're.
I'm trying to remember if in 10 years that's ever been a case of a company, at least that came to our board, where they actually surfaced that they were looking to make a deal with us to have a discount or some special thing done for them. Maybe it happened at the staff level and
Oh, it does happen to staff.
okay. Then,
Yeah, and we're because of us being an MLP and there's legal requirements in terms of us setting rates, we have to be consistent with everybody.
Yeah.
That's why I want to try and create this so that we can create a little incentive. We don't know if it's going to move the needle. Just the fact that we have it is going to be important. And then, back to your point, right? Economically, we'll make sure that it doesn't hurt the other customers, but there is an underlying premise that load that stays around, back to your point, Bob, we want load to stay here, right? Because it gives us more volume, gives us more revenue, gives us more, what we're really trying to do, our network is right now roughly about 48%, capacity utilization of our network is about 48%, sub 15, which is pretty typical. And, all the things that we're trying to do is to encourage and move that up, and whatever that number works out to be, 60% or 70%, it'll never be 100%. We don't want it to be 100%. We need to have a buffer in there. But where we load the curve and driving the curve up is something we want to do, and we want to do it sooner rather than later. Back to the discussion we had on the financial side, that revenue, right? So right now we are ratepayer funded. We'll do a short summary. I'll do a short summary in terms of some of the additional grants. So we're trying to pull additional capital in to the organization to fund this growth. But what is clear is that growth is coming. And so we want people, so we're trying to make sure that when companies relocate, they relocate here. And this is just one mechanism. So we have more analysis to do, and that's why we wanted to kind of get initial, view out to you. What do you guys think? Comments. We feel pretty strongly this is valuable. Do we think, we might have one or two customers that take us up on it at any given time. I don't think it's going to be significant. The fact it's there, we're working pretty closely with the town of Wellington team, and this is it's just part of a bigger package, right? And so, anyways, that's the background.
Okay. The next rate was the industrial coincident peak rate. We currently have a peak demand reduction credit program for customers that select to be in that program. It's been working fairly well, but participation is lagging, and one of the issues with it is that there's a time lag between the behavior of them reducing their peak and receiving the reward. So basically they receive the reward in the next calendar year for what they did in the previous year. So we think that a real-time rate that prices their behavior in that month will help them connect the reward with the behavior more closely, and we'll be able to tie it together. So the idea would be to create a rate that charges them for the peak that they're using during our coincident peak, so that we're able to and we'll let them know when those peaks are occurring so they can select to use less power. And if they do that, the savings that we have for the system will be passed through to that customer. So there's no cost to any of the other ratepayers. They're just reaping some of the benefits that they're helping to create through their behavior. And it also allows our existing infrastructure to carry more load. So there's system-wide benefits that will occur to that. So we're focusing on the large customers, and we've got there are some challenges to doing that because the peaks are becoming more difficult to predict. So we'll be calling more peaks for customers to reduce their load. But we think that it's a more effective way of getting them to change their behaviors. And we're trying to give them the tools they need in order to reap savings. And again, the savings that they reap will be savings that they help create. So it really brings them into the process of controlling their peak use and giving them the information they need to make those load decisions. So we'll be doing further analysis on it, but I just wanted to present those two sort of rate ideas to you and let you know that we're working on them, get some of your feedback, and then move forward with the analysis on those.
Question, go ahead, Marlene.
Communicate with the biggest commercial clients. How do you start the conversation?
Yeah, so we on our key accounts, we've been having ongoing conversations with them. We have given them all access to a portal, the Tangent AMP portal that lets them see their load use, and then we send them messages when we expect a peak event to occur. So they're alerted when there's a peak event happening. Whether they see it in their email or we don't know. So we'll communicate with them on the best ways to get that message to them and make sure we're getting it to the right people within the company.
Further questions? Okay, I see them. Ready to move on?
Good.
I just want to drop back onto number 8, by the way, and I had a note. There is a commissioner's award for somebody who serves on a commission more than 10 years. I believe Mr. Talbot has served for more than 10 years. And so it should be a point to get him recognized at the NEPA conference.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Wait, can I veto that? Oh, no.
Look at that, look at that smile.
Has it been 10? I guess it has been.
I believe it's been 10.
Sorry, everybody.
This is your 10th, 2013.
Do I get a raise?
Yeah, it's 100% raise.
Right over there.
And a free NEPA check.
You get a plaque.
Okay, well, thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right, very good. Go on
Get
to
your
the general
approval before we
manager's
make the
report.
final recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay,
General
general
manager's
manager
report.
update.
Okay.
10 years comes with a salad.
It comes with the salad, yeah.
Yeah, I got the salad.
And Jimmy. It's feeling good. All right, so three key points for the update tonight. One is staffing and personnel, which is always important. So last year we had a pretty successful intern program. We had 3 interns last summer. We actually are also having a group of interns come back this year as another set of interviews. One of them's actually one that was here last year. But we also added co-ops. And so there's the intern program, which is basically the summer, and then the co-op program will go through the end of the year. There's 6 of them. I think they're all here now, right? All of them, so which is great. The goal of that program is threefold primarily. One of them is to have them learn more by applying their classwork and their skills to real world environments. And this is a real world environment. That learning is good for them, but it also provides value and contribution to RMLD. So they're doing some analysis and research, et cetera, just like they did last year. So that contribution to RMLD is the second piece. And then the third piece is, a lot of us here are enthusiastic about this, the current state of the electric utilities. There's a lot happening here. And so part of the reason why having this program, the third reason, is to take that energy and enthusiasm back to the various schools. This year, I know we have Endicott, we have Colby College,
WPI.
we have WPI, Mass Maritime.
Yes.
So the last point is for them to take their experience back to the schools and classmates and friends, and as they look at industries to go into when they finally graduate from their various programs, that they actually consider the electric utility and, more importantly, RMLD. So there's those 3 elements: 1, to learn; 2, to contribute; and 3, we'd call it basically guerrilla marketing, for lack of a better expression, where they're taking what they learned back here. So that's in place right now. So a total of 6 positions, and again, 3 of them are co-ops. Second big element, the morale of the organization remains good. Obviously, it's spring moving into summer, so that's always good, but there's a strong morale around the organization, which makes us all encouraged. On that note, we have continued with the flex time for the non-line individuals. So we have the options of doing 4 10-hour days, or 5 8-hour days, or a mix of 4 9s plus half a day on Friday. That continues to work well with the organization. What we did 5 weeks ago now is we figured out a mechanism to do that with the line team. So right now, the line team has the flexibility, and we've got to work through, so there's some limitations on it. So we've got the line crews. Some of them are doing 4 10-hour days, and other ones are doing 5 8-hour days. In the summertime, that gives us the benefit when we're out doing crew work. That 10-hour day lets us get a little bit more work done on each individual day. So we're doing that as a pilot. It's not part of any contract right now, but it seems to be going pretty well so far. So those are some quick elements on staffing. We've filled several of the open positions. You guys have heard from our new HR director, Sarah. She's been very effective. We have 6 remaining open positions, and we're pursuing those 6 open positions, which is good. Second big topic is winter reliability. We've talked about this on an ongoing basis. This is, as I mentioned earlier, it is something that we take very seriously here. We are not, our intention of taking it seriously is not to suggest that there is a big issue. Well, that there is a imminent threat coming down the road. However, we need to be prepared. And so the issue of winter reliability goes to, if we have an extended cold snap in the December, January, February timeframe, where natural gas gets more directed toward heating buildings and not toward generation, and oil reserves go down, that the generation stations run out of fuel. And at that point in time, and again, this is not doom and gloom. It's not to say that it's as eminent or in any way, shape, or form, but there's increasing risk associated with winter reliability. It is a significant issue that the industry, and particularly our group of MLTPs, are working on very effectively, taking seriously with the ISO New England. Next Tuesday, there's a national meeting on this very topic. So anyways, it's important. We are taking provisions to minimize risk to our customers. We take that reliability charge very seriously. So on that note, we last spring, we presented and you guys approved our intention to add 10 megawatts of storage. So we're finishing up some detailed contract stuff on that. So that's in process. We hope to get that installed in 2024. These risks that I mentioned about winter reliability are partially tied to the retirement of Mystic, which will be formally retired in May of 2024. And then there's the question of the Everett Marine Terminal, which is a natural gas facility adjacent to it. So those are some of the elements that are tied to it. But basically, the increased risk, which is low for winter reliability, is not till January of 2025. It could be December 2024. But anyways, some of the things that we're doing is we're putting that first 10 megawatts of storage in place. We've also, Bill and his team issued a request for proposals for another 20 megawatts of storage that we will come to you either in the July or September meeting for approval to pursue those. Those would all be under a PPA structure. Our view right now is that storage is still a very dynamic technology. So our view is, from managing our risk, being conservative from a risk perspective, our intention right now is to put together a energy services agreement so that we don't own those assets for storage. Unlike the solar generation stuff where we do want to own those assets. So anyways, on the storage side, there's probably 30 megawatts that we're hoping to, in addition to the 5 that we already have, but 30 megawatts, 3-hour duration that we're hoping to get installed in the second half of 2024. That is not trivial, and there's more coming on that, but that's part of the update tied to winter reliability. And more importantly, to capacity and transmission. The capacity and transmission savings of those battery systems is what pays for the savings and actually generates additional margin for the utility by reducing those costs. But the secondary benefit is the reliability piece. The last thing that I wanted to just bring up to you, we have been talking about within territory generation. I'll talk to you in just a few moments about Burbank Ice Arena, but we've talked a little bit. We've been working for 9 months now on Maple Meadows, which is a large landfill site in the southwest portion of Wilmington. It has the opportunity for us to put somewhere between up to 10 megawatts of solar on it. There's a lot of work to be done. It is not a trivial site, but with encouragement from several of you around the table and a lot of other individuals, we continue to make progress on that. Our intention will be to do a more formal request to actually acquire that land with a bunch of caveats. That'll probably be a September. We'll probably bring that forward to you guys in September. And of course, tied to that will be what we plan to do with that land and the land around it. So we view that as being part of the contributing to the reliable, low-cost, non-carbon. This Maple Meadows project will allow us to be more reliable by having generation within the territory. It will be at a lower cost due to a whole bunch of factors that I'll walk you through in more details, but it'll be lower cost than the wholesale cost of energy, partially due to the investment tax credit. And by definition, solar is non-carbon and it has class 1 certificates tied to it. So that's the update on Maple Meadows, is that we're progressing. Look for a request for formal approval to move forward with that in September. And then the last topic just for the GM update is the load forecast. And so we talked very briefly about that in the discussion on the 2022 financials. As you guys have probably all noticed, the temperature in New England since the beginning of the year has been relatively mild. So energy bills are driven by a combination of the rates and the usage. usage is heavily influenced by weather, specifically air temperature. Air temperatures have been very, very mild. So our kilowatt hour sales, we are 3 to 4% below what we were a year ago. There, and we typically, and the spring is typically the low part of the load curve anyways. We are looking carefully in terms of what the load's going to look like in July and August. Current forecasts are a normal summer, so not particularly hot. We'll see. Since our energy cost, our fuel cost are passed through, as you saw from the earlier discussion, that will keep the customer bills, relatively speaking, low. But it also impacts the cash that we bring into the business. So one of the things that Ben and I are looking at very carefully with Bill as well is what's the load forecast going forward? What does that mean from cash coming in? Again, there's no risk right now, but we look at that very carefully because we'll probably end up the year roughly right around what the kilowatt hour sales were for 2022. So load forecast is real critical. It drives, and it's not just 2023 load forecast, but I think there's general industry agreement that total load for the industry, 2 decades down the road, 2.5 decades down the road is going to be twice what it is now. But what does it look like over the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years? Which goes back to some of the questions that Vivek was mentioning, and you guys were also mentioning, what's the proper pace for the investment in our infrastructure? Realizing that when we make investments in the infrastructure, they're 20 or 30-year investments. So the timing of those in terms of, and the source of cash, et cetera, is going to be important in terms of how we manage that transition. And it's not a trivial transition, but it's a fascinating transition. The fourth point and the last point is the finance team under Ben's leadership. We submitted another grant application, roughly $5 million of a grant application. This one's tied to public EV chargers. We have a roadmap and a plan from now until 2028 in terms of sequencing of what we think the installation of public chargers, primarily level 2s and a couple handfuls of level 3s in our territory. This grant would basically cover us, cover pretty much all of them in reality, which is great. So that is in addition. So that total number of grant applications that we have submitted since January is $48 million. So we are in phase 2. We're in good shape on several of those. Many of those are multi-year projects. But again, as we think about how we manage the business, what's the timing of the investments, and how do we fund the business, and how do we fund the investments, and then how do we staff the business as well? So those are just a quick 4 points in terms of quick general manager update. There's a lot more details to walk through, but those are important highlights. Any questions?
You brought up the EV chargers. After the ones you've installed, like I know there's the ones I drive by a lot of time, there's no car in there.
Yep.
Is there an ROI on that to say that when you put the investment there that you're getting enough money to justify?
Yeah.
doing it? Or
So, location. Right. And the good thing about those is those were funded under the original grant.
Yeah.
So there wasn't much of an investment. Were they high traffic areas? Probably not. So that's part of it, and we put them in, right, with minimal cost. We made I think we made some of the investment in terms of the actual installation, and the state funds paid for the equipment. We're also learning about the types of equipment. Those are a little bit different style. We're finding, like, we now have amongst RMLD employees, we have public charging stations outside here. We actually have 4 EVs amongst our employees now, up from 1 a year ago. There's actually 3 of them in this room right there. So, I say that those are public chargers. There are occasions when somebody is in one of those stations. So the 4 of us need to figure out, okay, who gets to charge when. I say that with a smile. So
I saw the one plugged in when we pulled in.
Yep. And so, up on Ash and not Ash, on Haven and Main Street, those are fairly well utilized. So we actually track the usage of them, but the 2 that we have in Wilmington they're not high volume. And so we might figure, what do we do with those in reality? So yes, that's part of the overall equation. So that has to happen. But our goal is to minimize the investment by the ratepayers to fund those systems. So where we can get, cash or funding from other sources to fund those, then it gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of putting them in. But they're not going to be on every street corner. If we look all the way out, we estimate about 60 to 70 level 2 chargers and about, I think, 26 or 28 DC fast chargers by 2028. And that realistically, because most of the charging gets done at home.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, that was what Mike Highland was also saying, right? That was their experience.
yeah, exactly right. So, it's important, right? But it's not the key driver of the adoption of EVs.
Yeah. 'cause
Anyways, any other questions?
Location is so important. I mean, I went to go to the park this fun, Corner Power Lake, and Wakefield has 2 EV charging stations right there, right off the highway. So we need, and I think somebody in this commission once said you'd have something near the highway.
Might have been me.
Yeah. And I think you got to find locations nearer the highway.
Well, so, and that's part of it. I'm familiar with both of those. I'm actually a user of one of those two. And by the way, the northern one doesn't charge and the southern one does. And I've let the Peter Dion of the town of Wakefield know that it's kind of funny. It's like,
Well, they were both in use when I
good.
yeah.
Well, they got it fixed.
Yeah.
Again. But yeah, look, I mean, it's location, right? And if you look at where our connection points, our RMLD territory, we are very fortunate in terms of we have significant frontage on 128 and 93, right? And so but we don't own all the land around those pieces. So those original grants that we did for the first few, they had limitations. They had to be municipally owned property, right? Which is probably part of the reason why we ended up where we did.
Yeah.
So as with this new grant, there's a little bit more flexibility in terms of not having to be so constrained. So you're exactly right in terms of where you put them. But again, EV chargers is, in terms of the priorities, it is important, but it is not, I have to say this properly. It is an important part of it, but it is not the top priority of the stuff that we're working on, right? We have to get the substations built and I mean, there's a lot of things we need to do. And I mentioned that from the perspective that we are, again, primarily Ben, but we are driven to find additional dollars to make the investment into our infrastructure. And that's a benefit for all the ratepayers.
Do these chargers show up on some sort of app? So when somebody's looking for a charger?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's several apps. I mean, there's 4 really good ones, and then there's, I don't know, a couple dozen more. So yeah, and those tied to driving directions and is it available and what's the rate, and they're actually pretty good. So yeah, they're pretty good. Other questions?
Different topic, not EV.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have EV. So, you're talking about storage in general,
Battery storage.
well, in territory generation. Do you have any, but you think about us being a peak energy provider with maybe some kind of facility in territory, meaning when the load peaks and your ISO's asking for power, would you have consideration for maybe going out for an RFP for someone putting something on RMLD property to generate during peak times
For the transmission network?
for us in transmission? You're gonna be located, we're gonna get a location that's gonna be not non-battery related though. I'm talking fuel. Either gas, oil, powered type facility, which is kind of contrary, but when you start talking about reliability and you're looking out 3, 4, 5 years and demand goes up and certain things go away like Mystic, there are no generation locations anymore. So these types of locations they're going to be everywhere. They're going to pop up.
Right.
It's going to become more and more critical. But if you can cohabitate them next to, say, a substation, I didn't even think about this till you mentioned it.
No, what? Go ahead. It's so much. Oh my gosh.
You start thinking about that. Yeah, you're jumping at the bit. But you might need one in North Reading. You might need one in Wilmington. They got to be substation located. But
well, so maybe substation located, but your fundamental question is, how do we look at generation within territory as part of, and not solar based?
Well,
right?
Reliability. I would term it reliability. So when the power goes off, we stay on.
Exactly right. So for that exact reason, that's the underlying strategy why we want to have significant within territory generation. and just hear me out, hear me out. So, we happen to have, significant, natural gas pipelines going through our territory. Now, the issue with natural gas is the carbon. And so one of the things we're looking at right now is carbon capture, so that when we propose something to you guys, it'll be a non-carbon solution that uses natural gas. So we are actually working on that right now. We are not ready to jump into that, but that requires a combination of land, which we are pursuing aggressively. I say, I joke a little bit, we're in the land acquisition business. Seriously, we're in the land acquisition business. And on that note, we're trying to work with the towns in terms of land that either, that they're aware of, but privately held property. And the mechanism is going to come back to, hey, where are you going to get the cash? Going back to the fundamental questions to buy land, right? So what we're trying to look for is areas that are near either transmission systems, and we have 2 transmission lines that go through our territory, and or near natural gas systems. There's Tennessee and there's Maritimes that go through our system. And then how do you get access to fuel? Well, most importantly, how do you deal with the carbon, right? So there's a whole, we're going to come back to you guys with some concepts of near term for the element of reliability, which, we need to generate within our territory. That's our core strategy right now. I'll lay that out more clearly in September, but there's some stuff that we're working on right now that have a combination of thermal storage, chemical storage, and natural gas. And we think there's an interesting solution there if we can, and there's a carbon capture solution part of that actually would be a benefit to the local area as well, as another revenue stream, selling carbon. So anyways, we'll come back. So heard loud and clear, and we're on it.
So I know people like Bloom are trying to do stuff like this also. Like,
Interesting you mentioned them. Next question.
Yeah, question.
Maybe in a future meeting, could you tell us about the usage of the EV chargers since their
Yeah,
installation last
absolutely.
summer?
We do a quarterly report to send. We'll share it with you guys, but yeah, that'd be. We actually, Bill, if you want to comment, right? There's an analog, right? They're having so much EV charger use. We own a good portion of them. That there was, they're now trying to ask for our help to, when somebody's finished charging, can you boot them off so that the next person can come charge? So again, it's about location, right? But in that case, they're oversubscribed.
They have 14. They're all full
analog
There?
devices.
What?
at analog.
Oh, at analog, yeah.
Good for them.
Then there's a bunch going in that Teradyne has a bunch already, and they're trying to add more. So,
Yeah.
so again, but we'll report on the ones that we own.
That's the usage.
Okay, very good.
This chart.
All right.
Sure. Good.
Any other questions for the general manager?
When was it?
No,
installed?
move on to the Burbank.
Okay, Burbank, real quick. So we're giving you this intermediate report because Marlene and I attended a meeting between the select board and the board that manages the Burbank ice rink. Just hit the next slide real quick. Whoever's got it. So after this, we need to share this with the board of directors. Yeah, that's totally fine. Thank you. So the Burbank ice rink is it's an ice rink on Simmons Way. It's in Reading. You guys probably all are familiar with it. It's probably 25 years old. Anyways, it needs a new roof. And so that begged a question from the select board asking the board of the Burbank group, can you guys do solar on it? So I'll cut to so we've met with the manager of the rink, did some brainstorming. We are going to look, not going to look, we've done some preliminary estimates. We think that this building can basically support a 380 kW array, which is just, it's a nice size array for a building like that. We think that we could probably uncover through some of our programs, maybe 10, 15, maybe 20% out of their $120,000 annual electric bill to provide some savings from them. There's probably time of use. There's a bunch of work that we're going to do for them. So this is in the past of several weeks. We at that meeting, there was a question, should the solar array be tied to the roof, there is a program with the investment tax credits that, as you guys have heard from us several times, we as an MLP now have access to. So if we actually put that array in, we'll have an instant 20 or 30% investment tax credit in terms of that installation of that. So it's probably, and then given the fact we have very low rates, it probably, I'm giving you intermediate hypotheses at this point in time. It's likely that it would be advantageous for the arena and for the town that RMLD actually owns the array and installs the array. And before we do that, we'll come back to you for approvals, et cetera, as opposed to Burbank owning the array. That's a fairly simple building. When I say it's a simple building, it has lighting and HVAC and a refrigeration system for the rink. And so one of the things that we're trying to look at in the context of being more efficient in terms of the use of energy is there a way that RMLD can, and I'll use the word control carefully, but help the ice rink manage the use of energy between the ice sheet, which you want to keep cold, and, for example, the stands or the bleachers that you want to keep warmer. So there's the heat pump technology, which you guys know moves heat from one space to another. Anyways, we're looking at some opportunities maybe to do that. And then on top of that, going back to the coincident peak program that Bill just mentioned a few minutes ago, what Ed mentioned to us is that if it's a 2 or 3 hour period during peak hours, he can actually turn his refrigeration system off. His peak load's about 150 kW, so I'm going to guess about 100 of that is due to the refrigeration system. So there's another place where we can help them save money and save us money too, as RMLD, by doing peak management. So there's a bunch of different places. It's not big and significant, but it's a great pilot area in a relatively simple, small scale building where we can do some creative business models. So
Do the chilling at night or something like that.
there's a whole bunch, there's a whole bunch of pieces in terms of moving heat around in that building, because you've got that ice sheet is a significant thermal mass, in this case, a negative mass. And so how do you turn that into, so for example, one of the projects that the interns are working on is, has somebody else done some creative things with ice rinks, more than just putting solar on top, but, using that sheet of ice as part of an energy optimization system. So there's work in process. I'm going to send this as an intermediate update to, again, Marlene and I were just there as observers, but we took an action item to actually start this ball moving forward. We had a couple of questions to ask, and one is, would the roof qualify for an ITC if it was built at the same time of the solar system? Our initial answer is no. Any sort of structural enhancements could be, but just the replacement of a roof doesn't qualify. So we're going to basically say the Burbank guys should continue down the road to put the new roof in while we work on looking at solar and some of these other pieces. There's also a possibility of this being qualifying for green communities. There's a bunch of different ways for this to be a win all the way around, but we look at it as being a test case. So that's just a quick update. It's an intermediate. We were requested to give you guys a quick update on it because the commissioner, Marlene and I attended it. Anything else, Marlene, you want to add to it?
Just that we're meeting again.
Yep.
Eventually, July.
Yep. So just quick update, but we think this has got an opportunity to do some creative things too. So.
Any questions, further questions? All right, the next item on the agenda is our scheduling. So we got the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen on to fill the vacancy. Then we got the July, you can see in the agenda, you can see the meeting dates. Anybody have any conflicts, any of those dates that you're aware of?
Starting in September, we can go back to Wednesdays.
Go back to Wednesdays? You want to go to Wednesdays?
Yeah, Wednesdays. I have a tough time with Thursdays.
Okay, so we go, so September, October, November, December, we go back to a Wednesday? I'm no problem with that.
What about cab?
I'm,
You good with these days?
yeah, no conflicts I'm aware of.
Yeah, George, you guys are usually having conflict. You guys.
Yeah, no, these actually work. Usually on Wednesday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so-
Well, it's interesting, my office is moving to Winchester, so.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
So,
I'm moving to Winchester. The firm is disbanded,
Oh, no.
so, and I move as of June.
So these
June 30th.
Thursday, or there's one Wednesday in there.
So I'm moving to Winchester, so it may be a lot easier for me to get.
Yeah.
So if you want to go to 7, I believe that's doable.
Give it a whirl.
I'm looking at these, we're the same day, right? So.
7 o'clock, 7 o'clock would be the starting time.
Back to Wednesday, we're gonna be Wednesday.
Sorry.
So we have to Thursday, 5. That's the first. If we want to go to Wednesdays, do we not want to do that?
What I was saying is if we keep our
Yeah.
dates the same and they move to Wednesday, they're not gonna be a day ahead of us. So
Right.
we can never recommend anything to them.
Right.
It's a day
Right.
ahead of us.
That's an inherent problem. Yeah, so we wanna, can you guys go to Wednesdays?
Sorry.
My Wednesday's usually pretty packed, you know.
You have a problem Wednesday schedule is.
So why don't you fix the Board of Commissioners meetings? And then we'll figure out how to adjust our schedule.
Yeah, we'll try.
So you
Yeah,
work,
week
you work
before.
out there because we
Right.
want to make.
Be a week ahead of.
Yeah.
could always do the week.
Exactly.
Then we wouldn't be on the same day.
Yeah, so why don't you resolve their schedule and then we'll work ours next week.
First and second Wednesday are definite. for me.
The 20th works of July, right? That's clean for everybody. Right?
Yeah.
Let's just get as many done as we can real quick. So the 20th of July is good for everybody?
Yeah.
And then September, so the BOC is gonna meet on September 13th, Wednesday. I know that starts getting conflict with you guys, but do you wanna just, we can figure out later, but September, do you wanna do the 13th or? You don't know yet?
I can't do the 13th.
And the 13th, okay. We'll figure out the rest of it with you guys, okay?
Yeah, so we good on the 20th.
Second Wednesdays are all booked for me.
Okay.
First and second are booked, yeah. Third and fourth. is fine.
So we're set on July 20 only right now, right?
So we are fixed on the 20th. Is that good? 20th good for you?
We're going to the, 20th, we're going to July 20th.
Yeah, you're going,
That'll be in place. It's September where we go the day before.
okay,
So go Wednesday.
July 20th, same time.
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, we could, I don't know, I mean, we could probably start at 7, the 20th, if that's okay. We can start the meetings at 7.
So there'll be Wednesdays, and I'll start at 7 instead of 7:30. And then we'll figure out with Vivek, maybe we have you guys meet a week early on Thursday, if that's better
Yeah,
for you guys.
so let's go with the 20th and then we'll figure out what George your schedule is.
Say it again, Vivek, sorry.
Go with the 20th as scheduled,
Yep.
July 20th. And then we can, George and Dennis can see what conflicts they have.
We're on the set, all good for.
The 20th,
Yeah, it's fine.
At 7?
7.
I'll send out a revised list.
All right, that's fine.
And do we have tab coverage for the meeting on the 20th, the BOC?
We had made some plans. So she'll tell us right now.
Tab on the front, tab coverage for the board meeting on the 20th is done.
And there's also the 2 meetings. So. All right, very good. So our schedule's set, so I think we're up to item 13. if we-
Okay.
Then
13.
Well, we don't-
13
we
is the
can't
citizen
vote.
advisory.
So September 13th.
13 is yours. No, you're up to item 13.
Okay, sorry. All right, sorry, item 13. Okay, so we're gonna adjourn the meeting.
I'll move that the RMLD Citizen Advisory Board adjourn regular session.
I'll second.
All in favor, roll call vote. Vivek Soni, aye.
Joe O'Brien.
Ken Walter, aye.
Jason Small, aye.
Dennis Kelly, aye.
Guys, thanks.
Okay, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure to have you here.
See you guys.
Thank you much.
So we got, item,
Yes.
We got item 14 's the next
14.
one. So if you want to make the motion.
Yeah, I'll suggest a motion move that bid 2023-27 Station 3 pole yard paving be awarded to Cassidy Corp. For $59,595 pursuant to MGL 30, paragraph 39M. as the lowest responsible and eligible bidder on the recommendations of the general manager.
Is that second? Mr. Talbot seconds it. It's just great. Any setup? for
Oh, I'll get to it
discussion
real
here?
quick. Can I read it? Okay. I'll leave. So this is, so one of our substations is, in Station 3. This is the one up in North Reading. We store poles up there and transformers up there. That's a significant, the part that's not covered by, electrical equipment or by the battery or by the generator. On the south side, it is, gravel and mud. Not particularly good in terms of moving, either equipment in and out of it. Whether we're taking deliveries of transformers and poles or when our crews go in to pick stuff up. So the recommendation is not to pave the whole thing, but to pave the area around where the trucks tend to go. The original proposal, when we put together the budget, was to do both a binder coat and or a scratch coat, as they call it, and a top coat. We had budgeted $150,000 for that in the 2023 budget. What we ended up doing is, after discussions with several of the paving organizations, is decided to just put the binder coat on, the scratch coat on, again, for the benefits of allowing the trucks to move more easily in and out of there. We had to go through a bidding process since it was over $50,000. It was sent out to 11 companies. There was a mandatory pre-bid meeting on site. There were 2 companies that attended that pre-bid meeting. We actually received a bid from one company, Cassidy Corporation, and that bid was for $59,595, which was well below the $150,000 that we had originally budgeted. So the request is to award that bid for $59,595 to Cassidy Corporation.
Any reason why you only got one bid?
I don't know the answer to that one, Phil. I wasn't as close to this one. There's a lot of construction going on right now, and this is not a big project.
Okay.
So I'm gonna base it, that's my best hypothesis right now.
How big a square foot area is it? Compared
So
to-
it's probably the equivalent of 2 house lots. It's sizable. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, did we reduce the overall area? Was it the same area, or did you cut down the area being paved?
No, we didn't cut down the area to pave. We just basically said binder coat only, no top
Yep,
coat.
binder.
Yeah, so that was a piece of it, right? Most of the work is prep work, and then the binder coat, top coat's pretty.
Binder coat, that's a yard. They're gonna destroy it anyway, trucks, so. That's just part of the nature that they beat it up.
Yeah, they beat it up. Exactly right.
Screw binder coat. Yep. I'm good.
I could. I'll have
Yeah, and this
I
is
guess
a-
next time what I'll do, I'll have a picture of it that I can show up on the screen to see the yard, but it's the non-area where. Oh, can you bring it up? Can you go to Google Maps?
It's 2 houses.
See the mouse?
You got a Google picture?
Yeah, we'll try it. Let's see if we can bring it up real quick.
See if we
We got this technology. Let's see if we can use it.
See if we get to pick it up on Google.
Let's go to Google Maps.
It's insanity.
Okay.
That's full. Like the full, reconstruction, but yeah, maybe it's super expensive. Yeah. I just got a 30
I know.
by 80 on a public roadway that was $70,000.
30 by 80.
30 by 80
feet.
Yeah, 80 feet long, 30 feet wide.
Wow.
Yeah. That's two coats. The binder and the top.
So what Lowell Street cost?
Oh, there it is.
Okay, can you guys all see this?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so
Meaning during
see the mouse? Come on, mouse. So this is where the battery system is. This is all gravel. This is where the generator is, all gravel. This is the actual substation itself. Just down here are the 115 kV lines. This is all gravel here. This area in here is where the transformers, this is the poles. So basically And you can see we also have some, well, we had some truck parks along there as well. Those are the subcontractors that work power line. So basically this area, so excluding this area and excluding this area and coming down here is the area that would be paved. So it's a fairly sizable spot. It's in, you know, we're trying to get, you know, you can see that this area right here is gravel, but the gravel's been pushed down into the mud. When you're running heavy trucks over gravel on mud, you get gravel mud.
Yeah, interesting.
Pardon me? I mean, I say that.
Walk me through that again. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
That's
I
fine.
didn't hear it. I'm sorry, Dave.
I just said gravel mud and I just said interesting.
Anyways.
Yeah.
All right. Part of just general, I'm just trying to make the stuff, anyways, you know the background.
This
Did you move?
company- This, go ahead, sorry.
Did you move? Did you make the motion?
Yeah, I just want to add one more quick. This company, Cassidy Corp, that's a new one. I don't think we've had one like this before. You've done, the due diligence been done on this company?
I will make due diligence part of, if you know, contingent on successful due diligence, if you'd like.
Okay.
I have not dealt with them yet.
Company's been around, I think they're out of Stoneham for 15 or more years.
Okay, I mean, that's a name I don't
Great.
recognize.
Yeah, I don't-
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I worked with the partner of theirs and
Oh, okay, all right, so I'm fine with that.
black and yellow truck.
I'm fine with that then. Okay,
Fine.
it's been moved and seconded for the discussion. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, that motion carries. Go on to a policy review,
That was the due diligence.
Okay,
policy 5.
have that in my book, but that's okay. So, what you have it in the book? So what we did with policy, so obviously we tried to do a new policy, at least one. All of them need to be reviewed every 3 years. So this one is travel. The fundamental change we made here, 2 fundamental changes. And you saw it in there. We did some verbiage clarification and spell checking, all that kind of stuff. But the big thing is, this was, 5 or 6 pages of what we would call procedures as opposed to policy. So what we fundamentally did is we're moving the actual detail of the procedure to an internal procedure document, because this is a policy from the board. And we basically streamlined it down to, I think it's 2 pages. The other major change we did is the way it was written before. It was the supervisor's responsibility to make sure that the employee submitted not proper documentation, but just submitted for reimbursement. Our belief is that if the employee incurs a cost on behalf of RMLD and they want to get paid, they should take the responsibility to fill out the form and submit it, not the supervisor. We just thought that was, you follow what I just said, right? Yeah. So we're putting the responsibility back on the employee that wants to be reimbursed. And then the last element we did at the very end, can you just scroll down to the very last page there? So, just a little bit lower down. No, it's right there. Right. Okay, great. Yep. Section 2. So we modified the verbiage that the board is responsible for authorizing in advance the general manager's reimbursable travel. So like when I go on these different trips, I have to ask permission for you, which is great. But the recommendation is where an individual trip exceeds $2,000. So if it's less than $2,000, and we can change that number, but if it's less than $2,000, I will alert you. But if I need to go someplace, I want to alert you, but not have to ask permission if I want to be reimbursed. Does that make sense? That's probably the only more unusual thing of this whole thing.
Where'd you come up with the 2,000 threshold?
And how do we do that calculation? I mean, we
looked at essentially, cost of travel. If airfare is factored into it, trying to make it reasonable without breaking the bank.
$500 a day plus $500 flight, you go somewhere for 3 days, it's $2,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the used to be, there was no threshold that we authorized it, right? Which is silly.
You authorize everything.
But which is silly, I agree.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just wondered why it's 2,000. I could see it under 500, but why do we? I don't know.
Make it 1,000. I mean,
I was just thinking, you couldn't have planned anywhere at $500.
Right.
You go to a hotel, it's 300 plus minimum of $100 a day. plus
No,
you
no,
rent a
I get it.
car, So $500 a day for meals, lodging and travel. And if you went somewhere for 2 days on a trip or 3 days, it's gonna hover right around $3,000. So that's $2,000. You're right there. That's
Not to nickel and dime anybody, but would anybody have a problem with 1,000? Just so that, not you, but a future GM
I get it.
could make
$1,000.
lots of $1,800 trips and we would never know about it until a year later.
So let's just
That's
make,
what I
let's make it 1,000. That's totally, I'm,
Yeah.
just
Just to keep,
something not zero.
yeah,
Say the $1,000.
that's all. I mean, nobody wants to create,
some did then. They'd be in trouble.
well, yeah, but we wouldn't even know if,
You know.
okay.
You tell it.
I think we
First thing
have
we'll
so
tell
few actual responsibilities here on the board.
Yeah, but we're pretty good at keeping you up to date what's going on.
You are. So we're all agreed on 1,000.
Make the motion.
Yeah, it's fine.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve policy 5, training and travel as amended to say
Say with.
$1,000 in
Right.
Part T under Reading Municipal Light Board responsible for authorizing general managers reimbursement travel where an individual trip exceeds $1,000
You got it.
on the recommendation of the general.
Second.
You got it. You got it, Erica? Okay.
Same motion, just change 2,000 to 1,000.
Change.
No, but he's making
Yeah,
a
that's
second. So
all.
so he's
As
basically
published.
saying, move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve policy 5, training and revision.
Article
As presented with the change that, I think it's D1, section D1.
Yes.
Be with the 2,000 be changed to 1,000.
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
and then
Did we vote?
we haven't voted, but, was that motion seconded?
It was second. I seconded it.
Okay, Dave seconded. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, that motion carries. All right, we're up to adjournment.
What about the D2, board is responsible for approving these capital and operating expenses?
You do that anyways.
We do it anyway.
Doesn't belong, this doesn't belong in the travel policy. Yeah, you have that responsibility already.
Thank you for killing all that crap.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for improving our policies and procedures.
Okay, you want to make a motion to adjourn?
Move that the Board of Commissioners adjourn regular session.
Second.
All right, move seconds, roll call vote. Mr. Pacino, aye. Mr. Spalter, Mr.
Albert,
Calvert, Ms. Burden, better. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys all very much. I'm just gonna run some paper to, Ken.
Question.